It is that time. It's Wednesday. It's our time to answer your mortgage and real estate questions right here on YouTube, depending on where you're streaming from, either the Educated Homebuyer Podcast or my channel. We appreciate you being here. This week, we're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about mortgage rates. We're going to talk about what's affecting those, what you're likely to see, and we're also going to answer your questions. So start putting them in the chat. Josh, what's changed this week from last week? Anything? Any good news?
Groundhog Day. What we can say is we had a good week. We had a listener in North Carolina, Louise, and her husband Vince were able to lower their payment significantly. We have another listener that was able to consolidate a bunch of debt with a HELOC that was closing today or tomorrow. And who else? We had another one in here. Oh, Ben also went from a very high interest rate to a much, much lower interest rate on a fairly large loan. So a big week for listeners.
Good stuff. So we appreciate you guys being here every single week. Those that continue to show up even after they've bought homes and answering questions, and those of you who are still trying to buy a home or to get educated on the process, we appreciate you. Do us a favor, if you're new here or even if you're not, let us know where you're watching from. We'll give you a shout out. And also, as I mentioned a moment ago, start putting your questions in the chat so that when we're done with our slides, we can just jump right into the show. For those of you, again, new to the show, run about an hour, right? Every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So any Wednesday, we should be here. So if you missed tonight, you're catching this at a later time. Make sure you show up if you want to get your question answered.
I was going to say it's been a long time since either one of us missed. I mean, we've been going. Well, we're on 4 months.
It's showing, Josh. You see these bags? This is all from the show.
Talking to the camera is just wearing you out.
This is all from the show. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some charts, as we always like to do, and update you on what's happening nationwide as well as locally here in Orange County if you're local to my market. So inventory is still trickling up, currently sitting at 668,000 unsold single-family homes. That's 30% more than last year. So we are getting an increase. Weekly inventory jumped from 655 to 668,000 homes. Again, that's 30%. We're still below the peak of last year of 739, but at this pace, Josh, we're going to be there by mid-May, if you will, if we continue at the same pace that we've been adding homes. But it's important to note, still well below pre-pandemic levels, but more inventory is a good thing. So Orange County sitting at 3,565 homes. Last time we saw a number close to that, Josh, was October of last year. That's up almost 4% week over week. Huntington Beach saw a big jump, almost 7% week over week, 6.79%, sitting at 265 homes. Now, the last time we saw that, Josh, was 2022. We weren't even aggregating our own data at that point. But I do remember we were in the 260s, 270s back then. So we've hit it since the pre-pandemic, but it's been a couple of years since we've been there.
That also includes the insane listing in my neighborhood for $3.4 million, Jeb.
That includes that house as well. There's a lot of others.
That's going to be there in inventory for a while.
A lot of others as well. Inventory expected to grow another 19% in 2025. So expectation is that we're going to end the year for 2025 somewhere around 773,000 homes. So, Josh, I don't remember where we ended this year, in the 400s, 400,000s, somewhere in that ballpark. I'd have to go back and look. But the projection is somewhere around 775, which is actually going to be above our peak that we saw last year in inventory total. So it will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. New listings, 70,000 new listings unsold, plus another 14,000 immediate sales, 9% more sellers than the same week 1 year ago. And that's going to take us into home prices. So home prices are just barely positive at this point compared to 2024. We have 5 states that have home price declines versus last year. And at 394,000, the median price of this week's pending home sales, it's only 1% above last year nationwide. So important there as well. Home sales, 69,000. Pendings came in at 2.3% above the same week a year ago. While supply is up more than demand, we're seeing inventory grow. And with that, we're starting to see some price pricing pressure out there, which is going to take us into price reductions. So, Josh, we're sitting at 34.3% of the market now having taken some sort of price cut, whether it's $1, $100,000, whatever that number is, it's considered a price cut.
I always want to throw the caveat out there whenever we talk about this. Remember that your mileage may vary. We don't care about national averages. We don't really care about these charts. I have two buyers in bidding wars. One actually won, and that's in Maryland. We talk about Maryland it's more of the eastern seaboard, but the Northeast, that entire market is a tough one. And have one down here in San Diego, same thing in a multiple bidding situation. So just know if you're wanting a turnkey home, you're going to have competition. If you're willing to accept something a little suboptimal, those people are experiencing less. But all of my clients who want that property, they're still seeing some difficulty.
Well, yeah, I mean, the title of the show is Inventory's Up, but who cares, right? I mean, inventory is increasing, right? Why does it matter? Well, because it matters what's happening in your market. So understand that 30% of that 668,000 of the 668,000 single family homes that are on the market, 30% of those are concentrated in two states, Florida and Texas. So once you back out 30% of those homes, you take away Florida and Texas, you're left with 400 something thousand properties nationwide, right? You start looking at it like that, it's not quite the story that is being painted and portrayed in Main Street media, but nevertheless, inventory is increasing, and that's a positive thing. So, Josh, we hear a lot about tariffs, how it's going to affect inflation. Affect inflation. This is what happened back in 2018, as you can see on the left-hand side of this chart here. And what's projected to happen with, I can't even read the actual numbers on there. I think with 10% tariffs and
10% China, 25% Canada and Mexico, and then 60% China, 10% others. But the scale of the chart is important. You look at the chart on the right and like, oh my God, look how high that bar is. Those are 2% additional contribution to PCE inflation under the worst case scenario.
Yeah. And as of today, right, we're getting tariffs on automobiles made outside the United States. We don't know what that's going to look like exactly, but we'll see. I think it's always important to note this chart. We often hear people talking about the number of properties that institutions are buying, that they're buying up the market, that they're your competition, so on and so forth. Understand that a lot of these companies are buying a lot less property than they were a couple of years ago. So the share of home purchases by large institutional landlords owning more than 1,000 homes, you can see from this chart here, since Q3 of 2022, a lot less properties are being purchased by these institutions, and
many of them are net sellers. So are they buying? Sure. They're still acquiring, but many of them are selling more than they're acquiring.
And it really comes down to affordability. Like the numbers don't make quite as much sense with rates as high as they are for as many of these properties. While a lot their stuff is cash, it's still affecting the pocketbooks of the people that are renting these properties, so on and so forth. And therefore the numbers don't quite pencil out, and therefore they're probably finding other places to put their money. Josh, Zillow's market heat index from February 2025. The dark red, you can see it indicates a hotter score, a hotter market where sellers have more power versus the dark blue areas where cooler markets, buyers have more power. A lot of the markets that we hear about, the Northeast, somebody asked about San Francisco last week. You were able to jump in there and say, hey, one of the hottest markets. I saw an X shortly after that. I think it was like the number one market in California. And so you can see on this chart here, dark red in that area. Whereas, you start to look in a lot of the southern states, the Sun Belt there, a lot more, not necessarily dark blue, but kind of that purplish color, which is kind of indicating a market that's basically in between buyers and sellers, more of a balanced market than anything else.
Unless you are a buyer in the Bay Area, ignore all information about housing in the Bay Area. It is possibly not only the most expensive, but the most volatile market in the country. So not only are we sitting here telling you that it's the hottest right now, it's down the most from the peak, other than like Austin. They're still down 5% from their peak levels after the biggest run up over the last 12 months. It's always been that way. In the late 90s, early 2000s, it had a huge run up. And then when we had the tech wreck in 2000, oh my God, their prices crashed and no one's ever going to want a Bay Area home. And then 2 years later, they're back hottest market in the world. So unless you're buying there, don't pay attention to it.
I think I heard Logan say, I don't remember the number exactly, but I believe it's accurate, that he said that Austin appreciated 87%. 87% in that period of time, like that 2 to 3 year window. Nuts. So you wonder why prices are pulling back. But anyhow, so this is not working. So typical home purchase payments. Josh, what does this even mean?
This is a cool little housing wire chart of just showing average price, where interest rates and average down payment are of what that looks like. So weekly pending sales price from the Altos data, 8% down payment, Freddie Mac average 30-year fixed rate. So we can see that it's trending down, whereas last year it was trending up, but still basically at the highest levels. And I like that green line there just because it's back in the early part of 2022 when we saw the big run up in rates. Until we get that average payment down, 10, 15%, I think we can kind of tolerate the high end of that range of 2000 in terms of a more robust market. Obviously, there are people out there buying now. I'm close probably 6 purchases this month. There are people out there buying homes, but there would be a lot more if prices were 10% lower than where they are right now. So interesting chart, I thought there. Almost all of everything that I threw in here this week, Jeb, is just looking at what comes next. Everyone's guessing. No one has a crystal ball. We got different things that we look at. This shows the number of U.S. recessions begun during each year of the presidential election cycle. So we are in the first year post-election, that big blue line. This is when most recessions start, if we're going to get one. So some presidencies go 4 years, you have no recession. But if you're going to get it, it's most likely here in year one. The best hypothesis I saw is that if you're an incoming president and you want to do some things that are going to cause some pain, you probably want to get it out of the way as quickly as possible. So we may be seeing some of that with Trump. He's talked about short-term pain for long-term gain. And we seem to be heading that way. This chart here, Jeb, just shows that typically you see corporate profit margins flattening or decreasing before you hit one of those gray bars that is a recession. And we have not seen that. So corporate profits, we see the headlines, they all talk about pricing pressures, consumer stretch, they don't want to pay anymore, yet their margins haven't been impacted. So this could tell you that we've got a little ways to go before we see a recession. Those margins should be impacted before we see a recession.
It's hard to see the true scale of this in some of it, but I mean, some of those are pretty big drops. I mean, they happen quickly. And some are a little more drawn out, right? From, 98 to 2003 or whatever that bar is. I mean, that took some time. Whereas if you go back at some of the earlier ones, I mean, it looked like it fell off a cliff. So, either way, it's not going to happen tomorrow. You're going to start to see it before it happens. But at the moment, like Josh said, we're still kind of in an uptrend.
So these are some of the canary in the coal mine type things. What we had been seeing is, well, inflation's staying high because services inflation is high. One of those big ones is food away from home. So this is retail sales, food service and drinking places, monthly percent change on a 3-month moving average. As of February, that just fell off a cliff to minus 0.7 over the previous 3 months, when it was plus 0.6, 0.7 for the majority of the last couple of years. So bears watching. I don't know about you guys. It's not a matter of not being able to go out and eat. I've just hit the point where it's expensive enough that the ratio of enjoyment to price just doesn't do it for me most of the time. This we've talked about a lot. Those consumers who aren't going out to restaurants and bars, well, this is consumer sentiment. Also just fell off a cliff here over the last couple of months. Lowest level we've seen since 1981. The consumer's not always right. We show some of these consumer sentiment things. Consumer expectations for the next year of inflation are 5%. We're not going to get anywhere near 5% inflation in the next year, but consumers, that's their average median guess. So this just tells you that they're pessimistic at this point. Jeb, I referenced this one last week, so I did find it and threw it in here. These are homes priced in gold. This is not a particularly useful chart, but it shows you that if we take away the devaluation of the dollar versus a hard asset like gold, we haven't had any home price appreciation in the last 10 years, really any going back to like 1985. Since you probably didn't invest in gold bars in 1985 that you can go buy a house with, this is not super useful data, but it's a different look at it, and it tells you central bankers around the world, they have settled on 2% is a magic rate of inflation. Well, 2%, which home price appreciation has exceeded vastly over the last 40 years, 2% inflation will cause you pain. If you had bought an IBM computer in 1980, Jeb, it was like $2,000. At 2% inflation, it would be almost $5,000 today. You can go and roll in and buy a computer for $500, $1,000
Sure.
today. So 2% inflation sounds benign, but in certain things, it'll jump up and bite you if you saw it on and everything throughout the economy. Thought this one was really important here, Jeb, because greatest retirement fears. So it makes the list, but of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things on the list, the lowest there is lack of affordable housing. To me, one of the most important things about buying a home is not just buying a home, not financing a home so that I can afford it during my working years. It's financing it, paying it down so that when you head into retirement, you're only worried about taxes and insurance. So I would have loved to see this higher. Not that any of these other things are not important also, but I really think if you don't have a roof over your head that you can comfortably afford, there's not much that can cause you a lot of stress. More stress other than health. And you can see declining health that requires long-term care, cognitive decline, dementia. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. But if you have your health, you'd like a house to stay in comfortably while you're considering it. So, Jeb, we've talked about this. We have expected the Atlanta Fed GDP now estimate, and they'll flat out tell you, we are not forecasting that it's not a forecast, it's a nowcast. It's telling you with all of the data quarter to date, this is where we're at. They threw in this, you see that dash line there, Jeb? I read the 4-page PDF trying to explain why they would put this gold adjusted GDP now in there. I don't understand. Apparently I failed my economics classes or took them 40 years ago and don't understand them well enough. But we definitely saw some correction. We had at our worst levels, negative 2.8. It's now negative 1.8. The blue chip consensus is still up almost 2%, but you see it starting to dip down. What may save us this quarter, Jeb, is those tariffs is pulling demand forward. So you're seeing a lot of things that may make these GDP figures and a potential recession worse in the future because a lot of buying, importing, manufacturing is being done now to get ahead of the tariffs.
Sure.
This is an important look, kind of all of the things that we have there. What has the Fed been saying? We want progress towards 2% inflation. They most closely watch core PCE. So we are expecting, we get that data on Friday. We're expecting here with the Cleveland Fed's now cast at 2.6 and next month down at 2.47. So you give it a couple more months and you're at 2.2, 2.3. You are getting in the ballpark of what they consider. The headline is expected next month to be very close to 2%. CPI under 2.5. Core CPI still above that with these forecasts, but people continue to be hung up on price levels versus inflation rate. Inflation has moderated. Prices have not. This, Jeb, I didn't use your chart. I didn't use my chart. We went with Matt's chart that he threw in this morning. So as long as we stay below that 439, Jeb, his take is we're just filling that gap. There should be some buying pressure. Step in here and keep us moving lower in terms of yields. If that 439 gives way, who knows? We'll see what comes next. The only really important data we have the rest of the week is that PCE data. Barry Habib, former guest of the show, friend of the show, is expecting it to come in light. So hopefully he's not jinxing us and it comes in heavy and we see rates shoot up to 4.5, but that's what we're looking at right now. What does it mean for rates? I was a little bit surprised, Jeb. I would have thought there was a bigger week over week jump. We had one really bad day this week, but I guess we had a couple of others where we got most of it back. But rates essentially flat over this week, still hanging in that little over 6 3/4 range. So good relative to where we were 6 months ago. Not good relative to where anyone wants it to be.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Just reading some of the comments here. We've got, what do we see here? Let's get out of this screen, Mr. Lewis, and go to that screen. We've got Michelle Finnerty in Ladera Ranch. We've got Kevin in Lakewood, Florida. So we got coast to coast so far. Melissa in Maryland, another East Coaster. Heather in Inglewood. What else do we got? What else do we got there, Josh? I know we got our Dixieland up in Minnesota somewhere. I saw that one earlier.
I don't know
And
where he's located, but Ariel says he's booking an all-inclusive to Mexico because his wife likes spending money. I like the idea of an all-inclusive to Mexico. I haven't been since Christmas. It was a wonderful way to spend Christmas in the pool, drinking some cervezas, and I would
I'm
be
not
all about it.
I'm not against it at all. In fact, I like Mexico. I like all inclusive. My wife likes spending money. All of these things fit right into our lifestyle.
Jeb, we
Listen,
keep threatening to take that trip down to Loretto. I'm telling you, you will love it. Wonderful golf course, nice little beach on a little bay. They make some fish tacos for you right there on the beach.
Wi-Fi connection. We just work from there. It's all good.
Yeah.
All good
We'll do the
stuff.
show from the beach in Loretto. I like
I,
this idea.
I think we're headed in the right direction, guys. All right, so let's see what we got here. Couple of different questions coming in. We'll start with this one. This one came in earlier. Robert Corona, Secretary Turner just said they are ending a Biden FHA program for illegal immigrants to buy homes. What is this, and how can illegals buy homes with FHA? So, Josh, what are we referring to here?
I don't want to call anyone wrong, but I think Robert is misreading permanent versus legal or illegal. So we had situations where people with temporary resident alien statuses were eligible for FHA financing, and now only citizens and permanent residents are eligible. And it's expected that they are going, the FHFA is going to follow through and follow this and do the same thing for Fannie and Freddie loans. In general, I would expect any of the private lenders, jumbo, non-QM, to fall in. And this, there's logic to this, Jeb. If someone doesn't have permanent status in the U.S., it's not so much citizen, non-citizen, what are we doing? That's up for the government to decide who can legally be here. But if I'm a lender lending someone money for 30 years, I think it would be reasonable for me to want to know that they have permanent legal status here.
Very good. Good stuff. This is just completely off note. If you are with StreamYard, you work at StreamYard, you know anybody at StreamYard, tell them to format something where you can put it on a screen and it doesn't shrink everything. Like, they need to be able to take what we do, Josh, and format it for these teleprompters where I can actually do my job and not like be squinting and scrolling.
If it had a third screen, like a picture-in-picture window where you could take the questions and just put them over on another one, that would be perfect.
Yeah, this is so if you're watching from any of these places, help us out here. Help us out. We're here every week doing a lot of this. I just clicked out of that question from Jay Homeboy. Do you see it, Josh? Let's go back to it. Josh, here,
well, you asked
I
me
pay
to find
into
it
my escrow account.
Me.
I look at county records and my supplemental property taxes are overdue. Why is that they only pay the secured and not the supplemental property tax? So my guess is they don't receive a copy of the supplemental tax bill sometimes. When you buy a new home, you'll often get something in the mail basically stating, or an email stating, hey, if you receive supplemental, you might need to send it to us because we might not receive a copy of it. At least that's what happened with me. Josh,
give them a quick overview for the non-49 states, non-California 49 states, what the hell a supplemental tax bill is.
Yeah. So when you buy a home in the state of California, California specific, what happens is your original property taxes when you buy that home haven't been updated to the price that you're buying that home at. It's still based off the previous owner. And you might say, okay, well, why does that matter? Well, property taxes in California stay more or less at the rate of which you bought that home. The max they can increase any year is 2%. So like I told you guys the story last week, or maybe I told it on the podcast today, Josh, that we were recording. I had a client, or not a client. I met a lady in an open house. She bought her house for $15,000, 50 years ago. And she told me her tax bill is $1,500 a year. Now, $1,500 a year. So it hasn't gone up. So if somebody bought her house today, their original tax bill would be $1,500 initially. Well, what's going to happen is once the county reassesses those taxes, it's going to go to whatever the current value is. And so you're going to get an additional tax bill called a supplemental tax bill saying, hey, listen, you aren't fully paid on your taxes. You owe us this amount because of the differential there. And so that's what supplemental taxes are.
So in general, you can get your lender to pay the supplemental taxes for you. The reason is, as Jeb explained, When you get the house, they are originally paying the taxes at the previous rate because that's what the bill shows. And they're not paying the supplementals. The supplemental is for the difference, but you're not paying it into your impound account at the lower rate. When we do your loan, we have to determine what your taxes are going to be. We have to collect and set up your impound at that. So you are paying in at the correct rate. They're paying out at the low rate. You should be able to send them those supplemental tax bills and get them to pay the difference. Because otherwise, at some point, there's going to be too much in there when they do the first annual adjustment, and they're going to give you money back. They are not very good at this. They're probably going to give you too much. And then the next year, they're going to ask for it back or increase your payment. So for the most part, you're going to deal with someone in a servicing center outside of California who doesn't own a home, has no idea what Prop 13 is, and is going to look at you like you have three heads when you ask them to pay your supplemental taxes. But generally, you can get a supervisor on the line and get someone to pay them for you if you send them in.
And here's the best part is that California is going to charge you because your taxes are late, right? They're not going to give you a one-time fee. It's like paying the IRS. You pay your taxes, you underpay. Guess what? It doesn't matter if it's $1. They're going to hit you with a late fee. They're going to hit you with penalties, the whole thing. So it's important that they do get paid on time. So, sometimes they can be late and still not overdue, but in this case, it sounds like maybe they're overdue if they're showing online like that. Melissa has a simple question here. It just says, is the agent's commission negotiable with the seller? And the answer is yes. Both the listing agent compensation is negotiable when a listing agent takes that property with a seller. And then when a buyer is representing when a buyer's agent is representing a buyer, whatever that compensation that is agreed upon prior to them looking at homes, because that's now required, is also negotiable. And that compensation could be paid a number of ways. It could be paid by the seller. You can build it into the offer and ask the seller to pay it. You as a buyer can pay it directly to your agent through escrow. And then the third way is maybe there's some sort of agreement where the buyer pays some, the seller pays some, that sort of thing. So, but the easy answer is yes, it is all negotiable. Chandler, I always have the question, Josh, on the show of whether or not people find value in the first 15, 20 minutes of the show, just because, again, this is a Q&A, right? And that's how it started, and it grew as a Q&A. And then we started kind of veering off that a little bit and providing updates on the economy and what have you. And I always say, well, is there any value in that? Well, Chandler just comes in and says, hey, love that you guys have expanded to include insights on the economy at large. It's very interesting and could reveal indicators in the real estate market. Appreciate y'all. So that's our answer. And you guys basically tell us that every time that we ask that question. And it's not Josh asking it, it's Jeb. Just because, again, I'm trying to keep you guys not only informed, but wanting to watch the show. And so that's it. And I know sometimes we can go off on tangents. So that's the hard part. Josh, we got Night Panda in the UK. If you want to buy an investment property, the bank only considers the potential rent of the property in approving your mortgage, not your DTI. Are there such products in the US?
Absolutely. Debt service coverage ratio loan. And when those first got popularized 5, 6, 7 years ago, the most common debt service coverage ratio was 1.25%. So lenders wanted to see that the rents were 25% higher than what your mortgage payment was going to be. And then it was 1.1, and then 1.0, and then 0.9. And now there's no ratio debt service coverage ratio loans. And if you listen to that, that's crazy. But there's higher rates, different issues with that. The lower you go, if you want the best terms, it's bigger down payment, it's higher debt service coverage ratio loan. So from that perspective, absolutely, they do exist. And for well-qualified borrowers with a big down payment, good equity, they're not even that egregious of interest rates.
All right, good stuff. I have no idea what this comment means, but it says Jeb is daddy.
Nash agrees. And Walker.
There you go. Yeah,
that doesn't look like Nash or Walker.
It does not, and it's not their name. So
I don't know what an Oslatron is, but the avatar looks nice.
Let's see. Jay Holiday says, I also saw that if you put 20% down, seller concessions can be up to 20%. Is that true? So Josh, I'm going to change the question a little bit here and say, what is a seller concession? And is there a max on seller concessions?
Yes. I'm gonna look it up exactly because there is a situation where you can go up to 9%, and I want to see what that actual number looks like here. So less than 10% is you're limited to 3. 10 to 25% at 6, and over 25% you can go to 9. I knew there was a situation.
And what is a seller concession?
Seller concession is a seller credit to cover any and all of your closing costs and prepaids. So closing costs are one-time expenses due to you purchasing and acquiring the home. Prepaids are things like taxes, insurance that will be ongoing, but that you also pay at closing. So although you can get 6%, you can get 9% in those specific situations. If you don't have enough closing costs, you cannot get that. You have to come in with your down payment. So you can't go, hey, my closing costs are 3%. Seller's giving me 5%. I'm going to use the extra 2% for my down. You're not making your minimum borrower contribution, so you cannot use it for that. So just be careful. Sometimes people will go out and negotiate these crazy seller credits, and you're not even able to use all of it.
And then something to note is that your compensation, as a buyer's agent, let me back up. If you negotiate a compensation or a commission with your buyer's agent, right? Say 2%, whatever the number is, you can actually ask the seller for a seller concession to pay that compensation as well as other closing costs. So that all of that stuff can be built into those costs, assuming you have enough there to pay it. So hopefully that's helpful. Mr. Javier Vadana says, how do we look so young, Josh? Josh, do you feel young?
He's looking at someone else. Yeah. It was funny. I woke up this morning, Jeff. This is actually, it's a very good comment for this. I woke up this morning, and you remember that Garth Brooks song, "I'm Much Too Young to Feel This Damn Old"? It was just going through my head the whole morning as I was trying to get going. I don't know why.
Yesterday was my 45th birthday, guys, and I will say that I feel a lot younger than my age. I truly do, mentally at least. Physically, there's some elements, there's some some things that don't work quite as well as they used to. Some cracking when I get up, all that good stuff. But I'm grateful for another trip around the sun, if you will. So. He heard rumors that my day starts at 3 a.m. Who is starting rumors like this?
He doesn't get up 1 minute before 4 a.m. Come on.
4:30, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, 5 a.m. is but it's, you guys think I do it for my health. It is so I have silence in my life. I've got 3 kids, boys running around. They're the only time you get silence as a parent is it early in the morning when everybody else is asleep. So that's when I try to get it done. So
I think this is great, Jeb. Melissa says happy birthday to you, but then she follows up with probably the most accurate statement of the night. So 35 years old with 5 years of experience, because the last 5 years have just been wasted. So the 5 from 40 to 45 never happened. You get 35 with 5 years of experience.
Yeah, well, COVID killed that. COVID killed 5 years of my life, and that was the problem. So so I must be 35 with 10 years of experience, but I lost 5 somewhere. All right, let's get back to why you guys are here. We'll get back on track if we can. Sometimes we go off the rails, we can't make it back. Was there ever a time when to buy a house, the logic was you needed 20% down to buy? Where did this idea come from? So that logic is still out there, depending on who you listen to,
One
who
of
you
the
watch.
3 most pervasive myths about housing believed
Sure.
by young home buyers still today.
Yeah, there's people out there that don't understand you don't actually have to have it. Now, there are people like Mr. Dave Ramsey who believes that when you buy a house, you should have, I think it's 20 to 25% down. Not only that, but you should be, buying your home with, 25% of your take home pay on a 15-year fixed mortgage. But nevertheless, I think listening to Dave, I think he's a big proponent of 20% down. And if you can do 20%, fantastic. But the large majority of people buying today with affordability and prices, it's not realistic. It's not reasonable. And it's not to say that you should go buy a home and put 3% down. But the reality is a lot of the buyers that I work with, that Josh works with, aren't putting 20% down. They're putting a lot less money down, and they're they're buying homes and they're gaining the same benefits of those that are putting 20% down. So it's all about comfortability and where you are in your life and what, and your goals, if you will. So that's it. That's the summary. Um,
We got one here that's an
all
easy
right.
one, Jeb.
Let's see.
Sports highlights. I'm going to ignore the first part of the screen name there. The sports highlights. Does 40-year mortgage still exist?
Why? Why would you Vag sports highlights?
Apparently it's a girl sports coach. So does the 40 years mortgage still exist? It does. It does not meet the government's qualified mortgage guidelines. So not for Fannie Freddie, not for FHA, VA, USDA, but non-QM lenders, portfolio lenders that are going to hold them themselves and they don't care about the qualified mortgage guidelines can and do still offer them. What most people are disheartened to find is that the increase interest rate that you pay for the benefit of a 40-year loan for the honor of the right of a 40-year loan generally eats up the majority of the benefit of stretching it out another 10 years. Where you'll see this a lot, Jeb, is on interest-only loans. They'll do a 10-year interest-only period and then a 30-year repayment period. Not all of them, but many of them.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. I'm learning as you guys are learning. Here's a shout out to Josh from Caesar Caesar says, got my clear to close from Josh today. Can't recommend him enough. Did a refinance that went smoothly and now the purchase just as smooth. Do yourself a favor. Go with Josh if you are buying or refinancing. So if you want to get in touch with Josh and the team, that link scrolling on the bottom of the screen will get you in touch with him. You can have that conversation and can take care of you just like he did Mr. Caesar.
Let's give a shout out to Caesar here, Jeb. Talk about
Shout out
educated home
Caesar.
buyer. Before he ever found us, he did this all without us. Before he got married, owned a place of his own. He and his wife bought a house, kept that as a rental. Just took some cash out of that. They converted their house together as a rental and now buying their dream home. And if you saw it, you might go, that's a nightmare. That's not a dream home. But they were looking at really high-end fixed up homes. They were looking at it, and he found a home that is going to be really, really cool when they're done with it. So talk about mortgage planning there. He had taken enough out of the other property. And hopefully, Caesar, you're okay with me sharing your story. Was going to put a big down payment and said, we're going to do a little down payment, keep my money to fix up this property and make it exactly the way I want to. So we're looking forward, Caesar, to seeing pictures when you get that thing dialed in exactly the way you and the wife want it.
Good stuff. Off topic again, because that's what we do here. But Christian says, I hear the best way to go to sleep. I hear the best is to go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time every night, and you'll get better sleep. And my Whoop agrees with that. So when I go to bed and wake up at the same times, everything is much better. Actually, in fact, if I sleep in, my recovery sometimes is worse than it is when I actually wake up. So yeah, I can attest to that. Josh Salvador says, would having DACA not qualify you for purchasing a home in California?
So it's now, again, this literally just came out today,
Yeah,
in the
today
last
or
couple of
yesterday,
days.
yeah.
So no one, neither of these guys have dug super far into it. But again, what I was reading is in simple terms, you have to have a permanent resident alien status. Temporary residency statuses don't work. It used to be we had a list of different visa types that would qualify you for government loans. And so far, this is only impacting FHA. It's expected that it will impact Fannie and Freddie sooner rather than later. But as of today, yeah, DACA should not in and of itself. Could you have a residency status that you have been able to get since then? Yes, but then you probably wouldn't be referring to yourself as just a DACA citizen, resident. How do they refer to themselves? You have a DACA person, a person of DACA.
Yeah, I said, what did I say? DACA? Did I say DACA? I don't remember what I said, but anyhow, I'm sure I'll get grief for that. Anyhow, Barry says, is 6 1/8 a conventional loan, 0 points, good at this time? Josh, it's through a credit union.
Well, we literally just went through the numbers at the top of the show. The nationwide average is about 6.8 right now, and that's not necessarily a 0 point rate. So to be 0.75% below that, I would have some serious doubts as to the accuracy or what that looks like or what the qualifications are required for it. But give me a call, Barry. Yeah, we can talk through it.
There you go. Don't sell. Wise advice. I'll tell you a story, Josh, in a moment here when we answer this question. But hey, Jeb and Josh, have you heard of a reverse 1031 exchange? I have heard of it, but I don't actually know what it is. Josh, do you have the info?
the accommodator, rather than holding your funds until you go find the property, the accommodator purchases the property for you, and
Oh,
then
that's
you
right.
sell your home and do it. So it gets expensive, but everything's relative, right? If you have a $2, $3, $4 million property and you're needing to exchange to avoid three or four, $500,000 of taxes, paying some money for a reverse exchange can absolutely make sense. They're not super common, even among exchange accommodators. Not all of them will handle them, but in the right situation, it can be a very good tool.
Okay, so the story I was going to tell is so every Friday I get donuts for my boys after the gym. So on the way
Where
home,
from?
stop
From where?
17th Street donut shop. So I go in there, stop, get donuts, and head home. Well, there's always 3 or 4 guys in there every morning. Typically, they sit outside during the winter. They sit inside. And one of the gentlemen was there by himself. I see him every Friday. Never talk to him. I just always say hi, blah blah blah. Well, he was by himself, so I was like, hey, by yourself, just small talk, right? And we started chatting, and it came up about what I did for work, and I told him, hey, I sell real estate, so and so, so on
You
and so
told him
forth.
you
And he
told him
said,
you're an influencer. You're
I didn't tell him
an
that.
online personality and an
I said I
influencer.
sell real estate, and he asked me how long, so on and so forth. And then he said, hey, I've had my broker's license 51 years, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm like, do you still have it? He said, yeah, I do. And he goes, when I got started in the business, I forget what age he said he was. He said, the best advice I ever got. He goes, if one of his friends, somebody at that time basically said, listen, you can make a lot of money selling real estate, but you can get rich owning it. And then he went on to tell me how he
He has
owned
37 free and clear homes.
basically. He owned 200 plus lots in Lake Havasu. I mean, not Lake Havasu. Yeah, Lake Havasu area. He built 2 championship golf courses, built 40 tall and skinnies downtown. Like, just went through like a list of like just everything. And I said, do you still own any of it? He goes, yep, own a lot of it. And I'm like, good for you, man. Good for you. So wise advice, keep your real estate. Like, that's what I got out of that. Like, you can, if you're a real estate agent and you watch this, you can make a lot of money selling it, but you can make a lot more money owning it. So it's, that's stuck in my head ever since he said it.
Jeb, my greatest regrets in life are the properties that I sold,
Sure.
not
Absolutely.
the ones that I bought. And I can't. I will tell you this. So here's interesting. People think, oh, you're in the business. You're a perma bull. We sold my first condo, which we've told the story many times. Bought it for 197. 5 years later, we refinanced it. It appraised for 350. We were able to take out $50,000-$60,000 for the down payment for my house that we're in now. So it didn't even. I mean, it paid the down payment for the next one. Well, 2 years later, no, 2003, 4 years later, it was worth a little over $700,000. So it had doubled, and then it doubled again. And we looked up, and we're talking about, it didn't take a genius to figure out what was coming at that time. Very different than now, very clear what was going to happen. So we sold it. I think this is the greatest move ever. And despite what I'm about to tell you next, my wife cries about this to this day and thinks it's the worst move ever because she really wishes we still had that condo. Bitchin' condo, block and a half in from the beach over on 20th Street here in Huntington. So the people that we sold it to, first we sold it for Jeb for $715,000. 2 days before closing, the people backed out. They were way past their contingency periods. We got to keep their $10,000 deposit, and we ended up selling it for $705,000. The people that bought it for $705,000 were the not smart ones, because 2.5 years later, they lost it in a short sale for like $400,000. I should have bought it back then, did not buy it, and now it's about $1.1 million. So just crazy things. But just to reinforce that story of, I don't necessarily think the next 50 years are going to be as good for real estate as the last 50 years. I still don't want to give up anything I own. You will pry it from my cold, dead hands. And hopefully that's a long time from now.
There you go. All right. I saw a question here. Money Bag says, can I re-amortize my mortgage or my loan without putting down a big lump sum, Josh?
So you can recast it, which basically means, so without putting down a big lump sum, how would we re-amortize if we don't put down a big lump sum? What would be the benefit? What would be the reason? It's amortized over the remaining term of your loan. So if you're asking, can I add years onto my loan? No, the lender wants their money back according to your previous agreement. So if you did put a big lump sum down, most situations you can talk to your servicer and they will allow you to recast that new balance with lower payments over the remaining term of the loan. But unless I'm missing the question, re-amortizing to a longer amortization, no lender is going to go along with that.
There you go. Good stuff. My son jumping in here telling me he loves me. Look at that, guys.
You
That's
bring
what
him
you want as a
donuts.
father.
Why would he not love you?
That's what you want as a dad. Um, Chris, probably the biggest proponent of facial hair for me that we have on the channel, wants me to grow a mustache, and I can't do it. I feel like Tom Selleck every time I grow a mustache. It's this big bushy thing that's like, yeah, it just doesn't belong on a face, and so I I refuse. I refuse to go that route. Alfonso, I own a home in Nevada, but my job relocated me to Florida. My Nevada home is an FHA loan that I refied a month ago. Can I buy in Florida as a primary without selling my Nevada home? How much down payment? 5%? Question mark.
Let's go full-blown nerd mode on the guidelines. You can, in certain instances, have multiple FHA loans. So you can buy in Florida, you could use FHA financing. So we have the 100-mile rule for FHA, which means you have to move at least 100 miles away to be able to use rents to offset the payment on your departing residence. We also have to move far enough away that it makes sense that you cannot commute to the job with the new property. So Nevada to Florida is going to be more than 100 miles. Not a reasonable commute for you. So you could do FHA, you could do 5% down conventional. The one that you couldn't do is 3% down conventional because it either requires you to be a first-time buyer, which you wouldn't qualify as, or you have to meet the Home Ready, Home Possible guidelines, which I'm thinking your new job probably is paying you more if they moved you from Nevada to Florida, probably paying you more than 80% of the area median income. But those would be your guidelines. If you want to talk it through, again, Jeb has the link there on the crawl at the bottom. Use that link, get connected. We can absolutely walk you through what your options are.
All right. We had a question earlier, Josh, on rates on second homes. Is there a difference in a primary home and a second home with investment? And how about down payment?
So there didn't used to be. There used to be a guideline, a down payment difference. So for the second home, you had to put at least 10% home, 10% down, but the rates were the same. And I believe it was 2023. We got a massive realignment of the loan level price adjustments, and now they are priced exactly like a non-owner property. So no benefit. Really at all to going non-owner. And a lot of people, it's kind of silly when you align them exactly that way, because now you're training people to just lie. Say it's an investment property and you're going to rent it out, and you can use 75% of whatever the market rents are to help you qualify for the home that you're actually going to use as a second home. So government action, government genius in action there, incentivizing people to do things that aren't in the government's best interest when they're guaranteeing those loans.
All right, Josh, we had someone join the Rate Watch list a couple of weeks ago. So for those of you who are watching, don't know what that is. Basically, if you currently have a loan at a rate higher than what you want, and you're thinking of refinancing as rates move down, we created a Rate Watch list. You can go to jebsmith.net/rate watch, fill out some information, provide a couple of documents, and what Josh has is basically a database of people that he'll reach out to as mortgage rates come down. So if you're considering you want somebody to watch rates for you, it's a smart way to do it versus having to look at the market every day. So that's where you would go. But Josh, if somebody joined that, how would they find out what the strike price or rate is?
So it's a third-party tool that we use, and we've uploaded everyone in there. And I'm actually in the process of custom coding a spreadsheet. Me and GPT are in the process of custom coding a spreadsheet that will just ping me when people hit their strike rates, because I don't like the flexibility. In general, what we're doing as I'm building out this custom spreadsheet, our rule of 125,000 divided by 500 by your loan amount will tell you. So and see, doesn't say what your loan is. So a $500,000 loan amount needs to move at least 0.25%. And that is kind of what we're going through. And it's not necessarily, hey, at 0.25%, someone with a $500,000 loan is absolutely going to do this, but it's probably a good time to start that conversation and say, hey, is it 3/8? Is it a half? When are you exactly ready to go? So what we're going to be doing over the next 10 to 14 days is, as I get that spreadsheet dialed in, I'm going to shoot an email out to everyone. Here's the data we have from what you sent in. Want to make sure that this is still accurate. Here's where we're seeing your strike rate. If you want to have a conversation, let's get on a call and go through it. But in general, it's following the rule of 125,000 divided by your loan amount to trigger having the conversation. It may not mean we're going to do it today, but at least should start talking about it.
Good stuff, Josh. if you got somebody looking to buy a $400,000 home, what down payment is smart? If they have 50% of that.
I don't know about you, Jeb, but I miss the good old days when rates were 4% and you would say, no, don't ever put more down than you have to. Borrow as much as you can at 3.5, 4%, because you're going to easily beat that no matter where you put the money in the market. Now you got to ask yourself, how good of an investor am I? How confident am I of what my returns are going to be? How low do I need that payment to be? Can I qualify and comfortably make the payment with 20% down, 25% down, 30% down versus 50%? This is what we talk about when we talk about that BuyWise roadmap that we go through with listeners when they reach out. It's showing you side-by-side comparison. So what I would do in this situation is say, what's the least? What's the least you would put down? And oftentimes they'll say, I'm not going to do less than 20%. I'm not going to pay mortgage insurance. Okay, cool. Let's use that. And then the high end is 50%. Let's split the difference. What does a 35% down payment look like? And let's look at the three of those and say, which of those payments are you comfortable with? And with the extra money that you're keeping in your pocket versus tying it up in equity of the home, what would you do with it? And the important thing to remember is you put that 50% down, that money is yours in terms of home equity, but you got to ask someone permission to get it. Do you want to ask someone permission to access your money? For the most part, the answer is no, but we balance that with where do you want your payment to be and kind of work with a number that's just a balance of those two.
Good stuff. Yeah. I mean, to each his own, right? So, some people, Josh, you talk to, I know the conversations, they're thinking of putting 10% down. They end up putting 5, right? And keeping the money in the bank because they see the difference in the payment and go, that's not that much money. I'd rather have the money in my bank account. Some people say, you know what, I'll put this down and I'll use the other to pay off some of my other debts. And then, so, yeah, I'm not putting that money in my forced savings account, if you will, as a home, but I'm able to pay off these other things and my overall debt load is less. So I think it's having somebody to walk you through the different options and give you some guidance and helping you make the right decision. So that's what Josh does. That's link at the bottom of the screen. We'll get you in touch with him. So it's an easy conversation to have. And honestly, it's never too early to start that, right? I mean, if you're 3 months out, 6 months out, have the conversation now. That way, if there's things to work on, you can start working on them. Mr. Lewis, we have no more questions. We've
Time to go.
We've done
Wednesday.
We've done everything we came to do. So with that, while there's no questions, if you haven't put them in, I'll talk about this week's episode, Josh. This week, what do we talk about? Do we talk about lender credits? What do we talk about this week on the podcast? I forget. I don't even remember.
We're too far ahead. I forget too.
I forget what we talked about. I think we talked about the housing market, what's currently happening in the market, but I honestly don't even remember. That tells you how much we
went tariffs, recession, and then
this week we're talking about tariffs. That's what we're doing. We are talking about tariffs this week. So if you haven't done so already, check it out. It's on the Educated Homebuyer podcast. I'm interested in you guys, a quick poll. If you watch the podcast channel, or maybe if you're on the pod, do you watch it on YouTube? So say 1 for YouTube or 2 from like Spotify or Apple. I mean, I'm just interested, or do you switch back and forth?
Or 0 for I don't care about your podcast.
You can do that too. 0 for I don't care, 1 for YouTube, 2 for Spotify, Apple, or 12. 1, 2. I do both. I just go back and forth.
We got lots of ones.
Lots of ones.
They're all YouTubers.
I mean, that makes sense.
But we're on YouTube right now.
We are, but it's just always good. Is it? I always wonder, is it a completely different audience or is it some of the same people?
I think it is.
I think it's entirely different.
Yeah. And it's weird because think of video podcasts, Jeb. Spotify is pushing it hard. So if I go to Spotify on my TV and I pull up Joe Rogan,
Spotify on your TV
or whatever. Yeah.
What kind of craziness is this, bro?
Well, when I go to fall asleep, I will put on 48 Hours or Dateline or 2020 or one of the murder mayhem.
Well, you already know who did. It's either the husband or the wife.
The husband every time. You'll get a crazy wife every now and again, but it's pretty much the husband. Even if the husband was the one that died, it was the husband that did it. So long way of saying Spotify is trying to show me video. I'm like, bro, you're Spotify. Stay in your lane. I don't want to watch video over here.
No, it's fair. I mean, I don't watch you guys. I don't know if you've heard me say this before. I don't watch YouTube. What I watch on YouTube is either things I need to build something or help me do something, like that sort of thing. But like for informational purposes, like real estate, investing, any of that stuff, I listen to podcasts like personal. I'm not a flip flopper, right? It's either one or the other. And me, it's listening versus watching. So it's always just interesting to see what
I'm
people think.
usually reading at night, Jeb, with YouTube on in the background, and it's either YouTube golf videos, or I really like the YouTube car detail channels. It's something weirdly soothing about someone take a filthy car and make it clean. I like it.
There you go. Miguel says, you guys also help in the Bakersfield area. And the answer is absolutely. We definitely
And 20 other states, but definitely everywhere throughout the state of California.
Yeah, state of California. When it comes to real estate, actually selling real estate, I have a great agent in Bakersfield that can guide you through that process. That's a little far for Jeb to go, Bakersfield, and actually provide the level of service that I think you should have. So, but can definitely get you in touch with someone.
David's mad that I ruined his nighttime murder podcast now that he knows the husband did it.
Yeah, I mean, so my wife and I have started. We do the same thing. We're Dateline, so we go back. Like we've gone back to see. Like there's 33 seasons or 34 seasons of Dateline or something.
Yeah, so and for the first 10 seasons, it wasn't murder. It was like news. It was like a news magazine, and then they finally decided that people only care about murder.
We've gone back. Yeah, I don't know what season we're on. Like, and we're skipping through. There's still ones we've watched, and the joke is like we get about 5 minutes into this thing, and my wife's full in, dude, and I'm out. Like she's talking to me, and I'm like groggy. I can't even, I'm like, I have no. And the next day, I have to say, well, what happened? She's like, well, you know what?
My husband did it.
Yeah, so and so killed. I'm like, how could he have done it? He was part of the documentary. I mean, part of the episode. She's like, I have no idea. Like he was talking.
Bro,
but he was
the tell is when they're only showing you his face.
This guy's
you can't
full.
see his prison suit.
No,
he's talking with just his little face. Come on.
No, but this guy was like fully in. So I didn't think he did it.
Jeb,
didn't
clearly
think he was the boyfriend.
Jeb, we're not communicating to the audience well. Melissa now wants to know if we service Marin County. So are we talking Jeb on the real estate side? Jeb's not going to go to Marin County. I don't want to answer for you, Jeb. Will you go to Marin County?
I won't drive, but I will definitely connect you with somebody up there that can help. I have a huge network. I've been doing real estate for 20 years. I go to 2 to 4 real estate conferences a year. And so I have a large database of people that do business like me.
And I can vouch for we've done a lot of transactions with people that Jeb has referred, and we have yet to come across a turd. And that's saying something in the real estate industry.
We did have one listener last year that called me after the fact, and he was like, dude, the agent that you referred me to was not like great. And I said, you know what, I'm sorry. And I had prefaced that with, I didn't have an agent in that market. So I reached out to another agent who served the market like adjacent, and they sent me to that person. And they were like, don't say anything to them. I don't want you to say anything, but I just wanted you to know. And I was like, okay, they're off the list. And so occasionally, when you're counting on a referral of a referral or whatever, but that's only happened one time. And, I don't know, hundreds of these. So that's all, just being transparent. Is 5.875, Josh, a good rate for a 5-year ARM if you're refinancing?
So there's a tool for every project. I am not a big fan of 5-year ARMs. They come up real quick. 5 years sounds like a long ways off, but COVID just started 5 years ago. That doesn't seem like that long ago. So from that perspective, unless you are very certain that you're going to move, you're going to do something different, you're going to get really wealthy, you're going to win the lottery, I would just be careful with it. So that being said, when we're looking at when does an ARM make sense, hopefully 5.875 is 0 points. You don't want to be paying money to buy down a rate that you have to be in that loan for the full fixed period just to break back even. So hopefully it's 0 points, and hopefully you have a clear end game and picture of where you're going. Because the big thing is you're probably going to want to, if you're going to continue owning the property for more than 5 years, you're going to want to refinance out of that. So am I dropping enough in rate and saving enough that I got a really short recoup on that, 12 months or less, so that I have 1, 2, 3 years of that fixed rate to benefit from. So the rate, yes, generally we want to see it 0.75% lower or more than the 30-year fixed rate for a 5-year, and you're roughly at that with the 5.875.
All right, good stuff. Been over just an hour here on not a lot of questions. So what we're going to do is wrap this up. We'll be back next Wednesday to help guide you through the real estate process, answer your mortgage and real estate questions. If you have questions between now and then, you can reach out to Josh or myself. If you want to get in touch with either of us, you can use that link scrolling at the bottom of the screen. If you found any value, make sure you like. If you haven't done so already, subscribe. Till next week, Josh, adios.
Amigos.